Hello everybody, Kendrina here. Speech in video games has become quite popular in the past few decades, like Mario's "Ha! Oh! Yeah!" or RPGs with the entire dialogue voiced by talented voice actors. Now, of course the reason we can achieve this is because technology has advanced a lot in the past few decades, and games can hold so much more memory compared to like 40 years ago. So of course voice samples on like the NES is impossible, right?
Blades of Steel.
Well, guess I was wrong then. To understand how this is even possible, we first need to take a look at the NES's sound chip, the Rico 2A03. The 2A03 included two square wave channels which can produce 4 pulse widths and has 16 modes of volume, a triangle channel that has no modes of volume, a noise channel with 2 variants and 16 modes of volume, and a DMC, short for Delta Modulation Channel. This chip was way ahead of its time back in its release in 1983. Back then, home consoles only had about 3 sound channels. In fact, the 2A03 was so ahead of its time that one of the channels got virtually unused until around 1986 due to memory constraints and whatnot. But once it did get used, you could make a tennis game with referee sounds, or an RPG with the entire title screen being voice synthesized. That's a lot of words. But how did this channel work? Well, before we can answer that, we need to explain how sound works in the first place. Don't worry, I'll keep it short and simple. So, imagine we have an analog wave, and we want to convert it to digital. What we're going to do is sample the height of the wave at regular intervals. The rate we sample the wave is called the sample rate. The sample rate is measured in hertz. Higher sample rate, better quality. Lower sample rate, worse quality. See, I told you it'd be simple. Now, to sample the wave, imagine the sample needs to be on a step of a ladder, not in between. It needs to choose one step. The amount of steps the ladder has is called the bit rate, or bit depth. The bit rate is measured in bits. The amount of possible values is 2 to the power of how many bits. For example, 4 bits is 16 values, 5 bits is 32, and so on. Higher bit rate, better quality. Lower bit rate, you get the idea. As a reference throughout this video, CD quality audio is 44.1 kHz, or 44,100 Hz, and 16 bits. One last thing. One clip of audio that consists of many samples is called a sample. Yeah, that's confusing. Now, let's finally look at the DMC on the Rico 2A03. You can store any audio sample as long as it's short, like drums, bass, and the main interest of this video, voice clips. There are 2 ways of storing and playing back the digitized wave data: PCM and DPCM. Let's first take a look at PCM. PCM audio is actually quite common in everyday life. CDs, WAV, and MP3 files are stored and played back as PCM. PCM stands for Pulse Code Modulation. It measures the amplitude of every sample and stores it as code. Here's a quiz! What do you think the bitrate of NES PCM is? The answer is 7. 7 bits. The sample rate isn't fixed and varies depending on the game, but it's usually around 15.7 kHz to 33.1 kHz. That is very low quality compared to CD quality audio. This is what 7-bit PCM sounds like. As you can hear, the quality is quite poor. Also, PCM has one big flaw. It's not very ROM friendly. The ROM gets overwhelmed when playing a PCM sample and screen animations at the same time, so it pauses any screen animations while the sample is playing. Look at the title screen that I just showed you a while ago. Notice that the characters are moving, but only in between the samples. Battletoads uses this flaw as a game mechanic. Whenever you hit an enemy, a PCM sample plays. The developers treated the short pause as a cinematic effect. But when you want to use the samples in the music that plays while you're playing the game, you can't have the screen pause when a drum or bass plays. That's why we have our second way of storing and playing back audio, DPCM. DPCM stands for Differential Pulse Code Modulation. It measures the difference in amplitude between the sample before it, hence differential. Here's another quiz. How many bits do you think DPCM is stored in? The answer is 1. 1 bit means 2 possible values, 1 step up or 1 step down. The sample can't be the same height as the one before it, or more than 1 step apart. That is cripplingly less quality than PCM audio. But does it sound bad? This is DPCM audio. It doesn't sound bad to me, at least, and I honestly prefer this over PCM. Playing back DPCM samples is easy for the ROM, so it can animate the screen at the same time. All you need to do is get a sample, compress it, and convert it to 1-bit DPCM. Then, playing it back is equally as straightforward. Is what I'd wish to say. You see, whenever you get into a line, it's first come first serve, right? But for the ROM, and for some reason only for DPCM, it's first come last serve. What that means is that if you store a sample, the ROM will be reading the bits reversed. But that doesn't necessarily mean the audio gets reversed. It's just the instructions for the sample that get reversed. So it's more like corruption? But it's an easy fix, and many people have been doing it on YouTube. Go check it out.
Double dribble. Double dribble.
So, that's how the NES can play back audio samples. And of course, a less powerful machine like the Game Boy can't play back audio samples, right? I jinxed myself again, didn't I? The Game Boy sound chip included 2 square wave channels which can produce 4 pulse widths and has 16 modes of volume, a wave channel that can play back simple waveforms that has 4 modes of volume, and a noise channel with 2 variants and 16 modes of volume. Pretty similar to the Rico 2A03. But Kenji, what about a DMC like the NES had? Oh, no. That's it. Then how the heck do you play back samples on this thing? Well, the magic happens in the wave channel. You see, back when I explained how sound works in Chapter 1, I didn't tell you one crucial piece of information. Smaller the amplitude, smaller the volume. What that means is that if I have a waveform and I change the volume of it rapidly, I can create a completely new sound. This is what the waveform envelope on the Sunsoft 5B, an expansion chip for the NES, does, but I'll explain that in a future video. Anyway, if I play back a waveform with max amplitude on the wave channel, it sounds like absolute silence to our ears. But if I rapidly change the volume from on to off, we get a square wave. Likewise, if I rapidly change the volume at certain intervals, we can play back almost any short sound wave. Now, of course the wave channel has 4 modes of volume, so it can produce a 2-bit sample using its full potential, right? Wrong. It stores it in 1 bit. Oh, like 1-bit DPCM, like on the NES? Oh, no, this is actually just 1-bit PCM. What does it sound like? I think my ears are internally bleeding.
This is what my voice sounds like. It's very crunchy and you can just barely hear what I'm saying.
So that's how old Nintendo games could play back audio samples. So we can finally finish. Roll the outro. Why isn't it rolling? Oh no! Okay, for the SNES, sample playback was everything. All music was played back in MIDI and sampled instruments. Same goes for almost every latter console. And as time went on, video game music became more and more realistic, until MIDI and samples got barely used. Nowadays, video game music is live recorded, like Super Mario Galaxy's live orchestra. In conclusion, boy, I like that phrase. I can only imagine the magic 80s kids felt when video games talked to them. It gave a sense of connection, and for sequenced music, a sense of realism. Audio samples were the next big step in video game history, and Nintendo was one of the first to bring that magic to home consoles. Sure, the quality sucks, but why not take a moment to appreciate how advanced this was back in the day? At least that's what I like doing. Anyway, wow, you've made it so far. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see how this video goes so I know if I should make a part 2. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!